Hi everybody, welcome to episode 18 of Satellite 664. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Kaz Tagyan, and as always I'm joined by Loopy. Good evening, mate.
Hello, here we go again.
How are you, matey?
Yeah, not so bad. How you doing?
I'm okay, mate. Thank you. Thank you.
Good stuff.
So here we are. Now, a bit of a sad beginning, unfortunately, to the show. We need to pay tributes to a couple of much loved and quite
Yes,
important
indeed.
characters in the history of Iron Maiden, and one being the passing of the great Martin Birch.
Did not, don't think I ever saw that coming.
I don't think anyone did. I don't think anybody would have anticipated that because, quite simply, he was really not in the limelight, or no one had even heard where he was
Yeah,
living or
it's
what he was
crazy.
doing. And yet we all sort of woke up to that news one day, and it's such a young age. So we don't know whether he was
No,
unwell or whether there were
no, we
medical
don't.
issues.
Especially in these times, if he gets put down as COVID, then what do you do? You can't argue with it.
Oh,
But I don't know. It is a bit of a shock. Um, what more can you say?
oh,
Martin was I mean, he was always up for a laugh. Um, he was quite happy to be called the Paul Bully or the headmaster. He was, he was happy to go along with that. Um, and of course, in our last episode when I talked about pushing the button, or the episode before, whenever that was, it seems like ages now. It was nice to actually sort of be in the studio, like with just him and Adrian. Adrian playing like the solo, um, Mike at the desk, and me just standing ready to go, dink, dink. It is a sad shame.
yeah, look, I mean,
none of us are getting any older. It's as simple as that.
none of us are getting any younger. You mean?
This is true.
Because we're all getting older.
Yeah. I'll just shoot myself now, shall I?
No, look, I mean, it's I mean, I think back and Martin produced the soundtrack to my life, or certainly my adolescent teenage years, and the music that to this day gives me just so much pleasure, so much happiness. He was in many ways a person who, not dreamt it up as such, but very much masterminded that sound and gave it that polish and that finish. And he'd definitely be very much missed.
Oh,
So
when you think back, I mean, I can understand why Maiden wanted to have Martin. Considering like he made it sort of fairly clear that the only reason he didn't do the first album is because he wasn't asked.
yeah, that's right.
Um, Now, from Killers onwards, it was great to sort of sit there in the studio with him, with a hero, if you like, considering that Deep Purple at the time, like back in those days, in the early sort of like 73, 74, were one of my favourite bands all time. Listening to albums like Burn,
Mm.
you go back before that, like Deep Purple, Live in Japan, or Made in Japan. You know, when you consider that he produced that, and he was only about 20, 21 when he did it, and all of a sudden we've got the master in the studio working with us. It was just
Yeah, look, he's a very accomplished producer, and really no disrespect to anybody, but in my humble opinion, it's only my personal opinion, I felt the production or the productions on those albums from that classic era, so 1981 to 92, because I mean Martin was involved
92.
from Killers right until Fear of the Dark. I mean I personally, I'm one of those fans. I think the production work was vastly superior to
Mm,
some of the more recent albums. I mean,
yeah,
I absolutely love the new, the modern albums. I love the Book of Souls. I think it's a masterpiece. But when you compare it to, say, Power Slave from 1984, I mean,
Yeah,
you listen to that and just those solos just slice through the mix. As and you
very,
can,
very well done.
yeah, and you can really
Yeah,
distinguish every single instrument. Where what Adrian's playing, what Dave's playing. The vocals stand out. It was just incredible piece of production for an album which is now 36 years old.
yeah.
I felt when after Fear of the Dark, or rather after the 1993 live albums, I thought when Martin parted ways with them, I personally think they lost something in the studio. They lost some that, as I said before, that real shine and polish which those albums had. But
As you
anyway,
said, it's personal opinion. To be perfectly honest, I totally agree. Yes, I love the albums that came after Fear of the Dark or No Better at Dying when it all sort of finished, but with Martin obviously. But yeah, there's just something
yeah,
not right. There is, well, you can tell there is a difference between Martin and Kevin Shirley,
no,
or even the other guy. I can't think of his name.
Nigel Green.
Yes, thank you very much. My memory is shit. Um, and that, yeah, I mean, that's a little tribute to Martin. The other loss we suffered was
Mm,
fan club member 0001, John Duffus.
yeah, yeah,
Really, really sad. I mean, considering that when I first got to meet him again, if you like, through the Carlton Horses, I got a message from Castro, the governor. He said, like, do you know this guy? And I went, no idea. It wasn't until John actually brought me in a photo of what he looked like back in those days, and it was instant recognition. It was like, oh, Jesus Christ. He was actually, going back to the story in my book where Keith drove us down to Southampton, and on the way home, coming back on the M3, where I had been asked if I was going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. And I said, no, why? And was told to go and pack a bag and sort of meet up with the band in Ipswich. On that journey home, John was in the car with us, and I'd completely forgotten about that, sadly. But yeah, it was one of those situations where we sat in the pub and we talked about it in the car, and John said, "Do you remember that drive home?" I said, "Yeah, I wrote about it in the book." He said, "Oh yeah." He said one thing he didn't sort of mention was the fact that Keith was driving so slow. It would have been easier to get out and walk. We're on a motorway, a 70-mile-an-hour motorway, and Keith was doing about 10 mile an hour because he was so tired he was worried he was going to fall asleep. So normal journey from Southampton back to London would have taken maximum probably about an hour and a half.
mm.
I think it took us double that. But, yeah,
Yeah.
we got home. I packed my bag and I met up with a band in Ipswich. But the John was cremated at the East London Cemetery last Monday, and they'd laid on they didn't lay on a buffet or anything at the pub. We ended up going to a pub in Leighton called the Birkbeck Tavern. We were there from sort of about 1 o'clock through to, I think I actually left there at about 7 p.m. something like that. But there was quite a few people there. There was Chop from Air Force was there,
Mm.
which is was nice. And yeah, there was a few sort of friends there. Castro from the Carlton Horses was there. Again, nice to sort of catch up with Castro. And then I actually got to sort of meet John's sister and John's niece who actually found him. Bless her. Yeah, so it was nice, and I've actually sort of gained a couple of Facebook friends through it.
Well,
That's and we one little additive, which we will go into in a little while, was that John had a copy of my novel Thunderthuck, and he lent it to one of his workmates who read the book. And he came over and sat at the table where I was sitting. And the first thing he said was, "What planet do you come from?"
What planet do you come from, Loopy?
It's Loopy World. I come from the planet Loopy World. That was actually my answer.
Good one. Yeah.
So we'll talk about Thunderthuck in a
Yeah,
bit.
look, our sincere condolences to the families of both gentlemen. Both very very much loved
Yeah.
people. And actually, Martin Birch, when we started this podcast last year, middle of last year, I did say Martin Birch was the one of the top names on our list of people to get on the show.
Shit.
And we tried.
Yeah.
We tried. We tried. We spent the bulk of 2019 trying, and we just weren't able to get him on. But he takes with him, I'm sure, a lot of very interesting and insightful stories. So rest in peace to both gentlemen. They'll be sadly missed, and our condolences again to the families. So yeah, life goes on, and we've got a new announcement to make, don't we?
We do. Shock me. Go on. Shock me.
We've got a website, mate. We've got a website. We've got a new website. You set it up.
Yes. Well, it wasn't me. It was a gentleman called Antonio Biggio, who is a Maiden fan. He's writing his own book about the Maiden story, but his own sort of little take on it, which I find actually quite fascinating. And once that book gets out there, like, guys, buy it, read it. It will blow your mind.
We'll have him on. Inevitably.
Oh yeah. I think that's a good idea because it is Maiden related. So yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But yes, he first of all he built my website, which is now which is out there. It's loopyworld.uk, not .co.uk, .uk. He put that together for me, and I said to him, "Look, would you be interested in doing one for Satellite 664?" And he said, "Well, yeah." And he did it for free.
Yeah.
All we had to do was pay for the domain, pay to actually sort of set up the monthly payments on PayPal. The site is very, very, it's very basic. I love the simplicity of it.
Well, for now it's basic. I mean, we've got to flesh it out.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress. We've got ideas for the site. We've got some really cool ideas for the site. It's just it's just going to take time to build properly. But yes, I agree.
I just love the way that he actually set up the YouTube page.
Yeah. I do agree with you. The simplicity of the site and the user-friendly nature of the site is definitely a winner. And yes, there is you click onto the YouTube page, and it has every single episode right there. Because I've had a few people contact me and say, "Hey, I didn't know you guys interviewed Blaze Bayley, or I didn't know you guys had Keith Wilfort on." Because when you get onto the YouTube sort of app or the YouTube site,
even Young Joe, when you think about it,
things episodes don't tend to come up. Episodes don't tend to come up in chronological order or whatnot. Whereas the way that the Antonio set up the actual YouTube page on our website, all the episodes are there in their glory from number one to this one. So
and the beauty of it is that the way it's been set up is that as soon as we release a video on YouTube, it instantly adds itself to the website. So you're not going to miss an episode. It's all there. I love that.
So Antonio, grazie, amico.
Yeah, gracias.
Well, gracias is Spanish. Grazie.
That's right,
Grazie is Italian.
I've not been there for so many years, I forgot.
Yeah, well,
maybe next year.
Should have been there, but anyway. Well, so what are we going to do now?
I'm going to do a shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
What are you going to? What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first chapter of my novel Thunderthuck. See, there's that name again. You've got to say it properly.
Well, how do you say
Thunder,
it?
Thunderthuck.
FUNDERTHUCK.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll tell you what I'll do. Hang on a second, because here's the thing. Right, what I can do is
Oh, this is going to be good. This is really impressive. When Loopy did this, I was quite
yeah,
blown away
I
by
can
this.
go like that.
Wow. Just
Just because to me that is backwards. So if I show that, that would also be backwards. But this is the book,
yes.
and yeah, as I said, I'm going to read the first chapter just to entice you into going and buying the bloody thing.
Great. Well, you know what? I'm actually. I was watching the football earlier tonight, and I was yelling and screaming and fist pumping, and I desperately need some cup of tea and some water. So I might scoot off and leave you to read the
So
chapter.
I'm sitting here with a cup of coffee and a massive lump of cake staring at me. I ain't joking. I'm not joking. There is my bit of cake. The size of that.
Beautiful.
That's what Sharon does in her spare time.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go have some tea and cake and just hydrate.
Yeah.
Enjoy FUNDERTHUCK.
Right. So now I've been left with Eddie. I'm going to read you part one of Thunderthuck. And what I was using as a bookmark, I don't know if you can see that, but that is the plane wing from a 727. Right. So the book. Exactly 1 week before, a small entourage of 9 people and a member of the underworld left Grantchester on a make-or-break rock and roll tour of the Americas, that was full of cynicism and greed, and obviously they wanted their share. With a manager, a stage stroke tour manager, 2 roadies, and a representative from hell as security, the 5 members of Thunderthuck were finally waved off by Nick's mum and auntie, and a few others that had bothered to turn up, as the hired minibus headed through the town centre for maximum exposure, as the band's manager Ron had coined it, and eventually made their way down the M1 motorway and headed towards Heathrow Airport. Brian's mum would have been there if it wasn't for that nagging feeling she gets when being left alone. Oh well, she thought, time to let the old man out of the garden shed again, I guess. This was going to be the best time of their lives. They knew they could do it. They knew they could come back to England with their heads held high and say they had done the impossible. They were going to slay the world. At least Ad would try his best. I need a piss, said Brian, expecting a whack from his mum, but then realising for the first time that she wasn't there to guide him. This opened up a whole new world. We've only been on the road for 10 minutes, replied Ron, the manager. Can't you hang on? What? All the way to London? Whose idea was it to have a swift half at the local? Yours, if I'm not mistaken. 4 pints later and I'm busting a gut here. We've got to stop. Bloody Southerners, was Ron's response. This was Ron's response for a lot of things. Being Yorkshire through and through, he had no time for things that didn't go as planned. And as far as Ron was concerned, it was always the Southerners' fault. Not just one, but all of them. Of course, this didn't make sense to Brian either. He was born 2 miles further north than Ron. It was Brian's fault that his parents had moved south to Lincolnshire when he was small. A little chef cafe appeared in the distance, and Ron told the driver to pull in. You do realise we're wasting time and money here, don't you, said Ron. If anybody else needs the lavatory, then now's your chance, because we won't be stopping again until Heathrow. The minibus emptied, all except Ron, Loopy, and Ad. Don't you need to go? Ron asked Ad. Nah, being a demon, I go when I need to, but it also depends on the day of the week. I usually try and save everything till Sundays. Really, said Ron, who still hadn't quite worked Ad out. Why is that? Because Sundays are good for spouting shit. A little gathering here, another gathering there, spreading the good word. Yet to me, it's the best time to have a bloody good crap. It's my way of cleansing myself. If there's enough paper, of course. If not, any small animal will do. Ron shuddered at the thought and was hoping that the image he had wouldn't last too long. What about you, Loopy? Do you need to bleed the lizard? Ron asked. No, said Loopy, the band's tour manager and stage manager. But thanks for asking. It's not always us bloody Southerners that hold things up. Ron grumbled something incoherent under his breath as Brian and the rest of the gang eventually clambered back on board the bus and the journey continued. Of course, things never go the way a band's manager hopes, and today, of course, was no exception. I need a piss again, said Brian 40 minutes later. You're kidding me, replied the red-faced Ron manager. Right, we are going to have to start making a few rules, and we start now. If we stop for a piss break, I don't want anybody sneaking into the shop to get more beer. Is that understood? We have a plane to catch in 4 hours, and we still have over 2 hours travelling to do. Ed, when we stop, you go with them, and make sure they don't buy alcohol. And what if they do, asked Ed. Take it away and give it to me. You boys had better liven up. We're heading out on a massive tour. I don't want you blowing it before we've started. Now, there's another service station coming up, and Ed is going with you. You will have 10 minutes, and please, no shenanigans. Ron didn't get much of a response, although there were a few mutterings going on behind him, but he didn't hear anything he shouldn't have, so he believed that his minor battle had been resolved. It felt good for Ron to stamp some kind of authority on these boys, as they were going to need it if they were going to last an American tour. The minibus pulled into the service area, and less than 10 minutes later, the boys made their way back to the bus, carrying what looked like bottles of water. Good lads, said Ron as he watched them go and Ed get on board the bus. Any problems, he asked Ed. Don't think so, said Ed. A couple of them were in the toilet a little longer than I expected, but no problems at all. But there were a few strange comments while I was there. Really? Like what? Well, who is St. Ella? Asked Ed. I have no idea. Brian, who is St. Ella? Ron asked. There were a couple of sniggers from the back of the van, mostly led by Loopy and the stage manager. You didn't try that old trick, did you guys? Loopy asked in a quiet voice. Don't know what you're talking about, said Brian. But smell this. Brian passed his bottle of water to Loopy and watched in horror as Loopy drank the lot. That was pure vodka, said Brian. I know, said Loopy. I have my own rules on this tour, and rule one is don't try to bullshit a bullshitter. I've been doing this for far too long, and you are just kids. Now, I'm here to try it and keep you lot alive. We have a huge amount of work to do in front of us, so let's behave like grown-ups. Unless you want a ton of Ron coming down you, that is, and let's face it, he ain't a pretty sight. The guys all sniggered except Nicky, who was snoring loudly after the first pint. Loopy, yelled Ron. You didn't answer my question. Sorry, Ron. Which was what exactly? Who is St. Ella? An old virgin from Belgium, Ron, Loopy lied. She's the patron saint of beer, from what I remember. You'll have to excuse me. I was more of a music teacher. Don't bother, said Ron. I know bullshit when I smell it. But not vodka, said Brian under his breath. Loopy turned to Brian and said very quietly, do yourself a favour and go dark. What does that mean? Asked Brian. It's me and you code for shut up. Brian and Loopy stared at each other for a few short seconds, and Brian realised that Loopy was doing him a favour. Brian went dark. Gone awfully quiet back there, said Ron. They've all decided to have a snooze, said Loopy. Can you keep it down a bit? Sorry I spoke, said Ron. Aren't we all? Thought everybody else in the van, except Dad, who had no thoughts at all. The late September evening drew its curtains, and night fell without a sound as the band's minibus closed in on Heathrow Airport. In the distance, the orange glow of the city of London lit up the evening sky, and the last few Canadian geese said farewell to next spring. For the last 2 hours, the journey south had been reasonably quiet, apart from the occasional burp or fart. But Ed had apologised up front, and Ron felt it only fair to accept the apology. Ron had no idea about Ed at all, but he was determined to find out. But first there was a little thing called checking in. The minibus driver helped them unload their baggage at the drop-off point outside Terminal 4, and then disappeared quicker than a moth in a flame. Ad grabbed whatever he could, and the band and crew members picked up the few items that were left, and followed Loopy and Ron to the check-in desk. But mostly Loopy as he at least seemed to have an inkling of what was going on, whereas Ron had more of an inkling of what he wasn't. Sam and Joe Newhouse watched from a distance and realised that this was going to be an interesting experience. The brothers had worked together for a few years and knew the tour circuit inside out. And having Dad along as their tour and stage manager was going to make this tour a lot easier than some they had been on. Loopy knew his stuff and he didn't, and if he didn't, he could improve better than most. They were booked on a British Airways flight BA666 to JFK, New York, departing at 23:30, and they found what they were looking for with relative ease. Ad and the others stopped at the check-in desk and put everything down while Ron fished around in his man bag for the relevant documents. "Hey, look at that," Joe said to Sam. "Flight 666. Do you reckon Bruce Dickinson is the pilot?" "That would be awesome. Doesn't Dad know him?" "I think it's more of a case of knew him these days. He hasn't seen him for many years, apparently." "Ah," said Sam. "It would be cool, though." Eventually, Ron found what he was looking for and passed the paperwork to Loopy. "Sort this out, will you? I need a wee now," said Ron. Loopy had a quick glance over the paperwork and asked, "But there's only passage for 9 people here, and there's 10 of us." But by then, Ron was out of earshot and disappearing through the door marked men's. "Ah," said Ed. "That'll be because of me. Then let me introduce myself. As you know, my name is Ad. Now, the A stands for my real name, which is a bollocking, and the D stands for demon. I put the two together to give me a cool sounding name. Do you like it?" "Yes," said Loopy, "but it still doesn't answer why your name isn't on the list. If you're part of this group, you'll need travel documents." "Really?" said Ad. "Only I usually come and go as I please, and that means anywhere. You see, being a demon, I can do that, and it doesn't put a strain on the band's economy." "So you can just turn up anywhere?" asked Loopy, feeling a little confused, but also realising the huge potential in something that could be massively advantageous to not only himself, but the band as a whole. "Yes, mate," said a bollocking the demon, "and I can get there a lot quicker than you can. I have a copy of the tour itinerary in my jacket pocket, so I won't let you get lost." Loopy scratched his head and looked at the big fella and realised that he had a million questions. "So, what, we'll just meet you on the other side then?" The bollocking laughed. "The other side?" he laughed again. He really had no idea. Loopy felt embarrassed and looked at the ground. He needed to say something, but as he raised his head, he noticed he was staring at Ron, and he still hadn't checked everyone in. "What's up, Loopy?" said Ron. "You look like you've seen a ghost." That comment would haunt him for a while. "Something like that, Ron. As much as Loopy could muster for a while. Right, guys, that's chapter 1, badly read, as expected. If you want to know more, obviously, then go to loopy.co.uk. The book is available in the books section. It's available, I think, for $8.99 plus shipping. So, yeah, go and get yourself a copy. I ain't reading any more. Anyway, that's the end of that episode. Just to give you a heads up, sitting on the seat there is a clue to the next episode. We'll chat with you soon. Bye all.